Good morning, and thank you for joining today. We were looking at global barriers, so let me go to this. Okay. And we said that it can be very easily implemented using atomics. Uh, so what we'll do is we'll try to look at some codes and develop this further. Right. So let me. I hope. Can somebody confirm that you are able to see this code?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Okay. Great. So we have just a minute. Huh? Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so let's look at this code. What it does is that from main, I'm calling a kernel with n equal to something. It could be a large value. For now, it is 1024. And then there is a block size is considered to be 64, which means that there are at least 2 warps in the thread block, and therefore there is some out of order processing happening. Plus n is large enough that there are multiple thread blocks. Right? Inside the kernel, I have a variable called binary of n. So with underscore underscore device underscore underscore, this becomes a global variable on the GPU. Right? It's not accessible on the CPU, but you can access it across all the kernels as if it has been CUDA malloc and that pointer has been passed as a parameter. So binary of n is an array. So what I'm doing inside the code is that, I don't have this check of ID less than n because I'm assuming that uh, uh, it's a multiple of, let's say, block size. So each thread sets a particular ID in the binary array to its own thread ID. Then I have sync threads, which is a barrier within the thread block. And then I check. What do I check? I check somebody else's uh, binary of ID in the sense that, okay, so let me put it this way. If sync threads would have worked across all the threads, then binary of some other thread is going to give me the value that was written by the other thread. So that is what I'm checking. So I'm just trying to make sure that I'm accessing something from the other thread block or something which is far away. Because there is sync threads, I should be accessing something which is beyond the thread block. So this could be an arbitrary function of ID and n, let's put it that way. So if that is same as what was set in this particular line, then that means that sync threads is working across all the threads running on the GPU. If not, if this condition is true, that is, this is not equal to this, then that means there is effect of global barrier does not exist, right? So this is just to convey that sync threads doesn't work, right, across all threads, which we know, but this is just to illustrate that purpose, right? So let me see what happens. So it does print some error, right? And that is likely to get printed by lots of different threads. I have not printed the else part, so that will also be true for some threads, but this can also happen with lot of threads. So what this indicates is that sync threads is insufficient for us, and we will have to do something more than that, and that is where the global barrier implementation comes into play, where I would like to have a global barrier at this place. And that we said can be nicely implemented using atomics. So let's look at that code. So again, as far as main is concerned, there is some initialization which I am doing. So the way we said atomics can be, global barrier can be implemented using atomics. We keep a counter and let that counter go from 0 to number of threads, and atomically go on incrementing that counter by each thread. And then the last thread which sees the value. So all the threads check if that value has reached the number of threads, and at that time you go ahead, right? So that implements a global barrier. So here again, I am trying to launch a kernel K2. So that counter initialization I am doing in K2 init. So let's see what that K2 init is. So there is a volatile K2 counter. K2 init simply initializes it to 0. And then I'm launching it with same number of threads as the previous example, right? Number of threads and number of blocks. What does the kernel do? So kernel has some processing. That could be any arbitrary processing, but essentially you have S1 followed by S2, and I would like S1 and S2 to be separated by a global barrier. That is my goal. So my S1 consists of only a printf, right? This is before the global barrier. Then I'm going to atomically increment the K2 counter, right? Such that it goes from 0 to n. As soon as I increment as a thread, as soon as I increment the K2 counter, I need to wait until that counter reaches n, and therefore I have a while loop which does nothing. Right? And after this, I print the after global barrier. If this particular code does not work as a global barrier, then we should see this is after global barrier getting printed for some thread before some other thread prints this is before. Right? So the two printfs might get interchanged. If the global barrier works, then all the this is before printfs should finish before any of the this is after the global barrier prints it. So let's see what how this works. But any suggestions on this code? Anything that you think might create a problem? Okay, so if there are no problems, then let's try to compile and run this code.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, why did you take another kernel to? Actually, I joined late. Sorry for that. Why did you take another kernel to initialize the counter? Why was
that
there
we
a kernel
discussed before you joined. No, this is
sorry,
just no. I was just kidding. It's all right. This K2 init, I'm just defining it in a separate kernel because I just want to initialize that counter. But it could also be done in a different way. For example, you can do a CUDA memcopy, having a value 0 in, let's say, host counter, and copy it back to the GPU. That is also
okay. Thank you.
okay. Yeah, there is no problem either way. That is not an issue. Okay. Any other concerns here? Okay. So okay. So let's see if that works out. How does it compile and how does it run? So we expect that all the, if this global barrier works, then after statements should get printed after the before statements, right? So as you can see, it's going up. It looks like that is what is happening, although this doesn't give any guarantee, right? It so happens that all the before statements will happen, 1024 statements will be printed and then before that there should be before statements, right? So this is the change, and you'll be able to see that this doesn't create any problem, and this code works, right? So any questions on this one? How do you implement a global barrier using atomics? Some of
Sir,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Why are we, sir, is it necessary to use volatile? Atomic increment will make sure that the visibility is there. So if I remove volatile, it should work, right?
Yeah, so as far as atomic is concerned, atomic doesn't require it to be volatile, but unfortunately this part where I'm checking the value, that is without any fence, and therefore this requires volatile. So I have actually, I don't know if this comment is visible, but
Oh,
so I tried removing volatile, and the code sometimes hangs, and that happens because of this while loop. So some threads are unable to come out of this because of it's not able to, it's checking the cached value. That's the reason. It's also not guaranteed that it will hang, but yeah, sometimes I have seen that it hangs.
sir, so doesn't atomic increment have its own fence?
Yes, atomic increment has its fence. That is correct. But so that will happen once, right? And then some other thread will increment it. At that time, you are still reading the cached value. So you will update the counter, but that might be, let's say, 100. Right? After that, you continue reading 100. That is the problem.
Okay, sir. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other concerns here? All right, so we'll go ahead with the next part. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so this is one way, and as you can see that we are talking about a hierarchical computation, and therefore every thread being part of the atomic instruction, which is actually happening on the global memory, that causes an issue in the sense that it's a performance bottleneck, right? You're incrementing the same counter. If it so happens that the global barrier gets reached by different threads at almost different times, then this atomic cost is not that high, right? Then it's okay, it's almost like a normal write to the global memory. But if it so happens that many threads are conflicting, that is, they are reaching the global barrier at the same time, then they are going to get sequentialized as far as those atomics are concerned. So is there a way we can improve? And as some of you have indicated, you can do some sort of a hierarchical computation here by making use of that. I can have some barrier at the thread block level, which I already have, which is sync threads, and then let one thread from each block participate in the global barrier and coordinates internally with the block threads, right? So let's say the representative or your CR, right, from each thread block is going to coordinate amongst the class, amongst the thread block, and then these different CRs are going to also coordinate with each other, so that all the students in the class don't have to coordinate with all the students across the classes. So that is what we will do. Similar to the let's say the suggestions on the slotting, which I sent, at least the CS students will know, so that the students can talk to the CR will communicate with the faculty member, and communication will be low. If all the students start talking to the faculty member, then the communication is going to be much higher. Okay, so let's so as I was mentioning, we need to worry about this hierarchical synchronization when we are trying to deal with the global barrier. So there are lots of computations. Since we have large number of threads on the GPU, lot of computations can be nicely programmed using a hierarchical computation. We saw reduction, we saw prefix sum, now we are seeing this global barrier, and many of these can be nicely implemented using a hierarchical method. The reason being, and it also turns out to be efficient, the reason being that the computation itself is organized hierarchically on the GPU. So there is a thread, then there is warp, then there is thread block, then multiple thread blocks on the streaming multiprocessor, and then across all multiprocessors, there are lots of different thread blocks. So there is a natural hierarchy which we would like to exploit. And then there are things like sync threads is provided at the thread block level, shared memory is provided at the thread block level. There are something called as warp voting functions which are provided at the warp level, etc. So those all you can take advantage of when you do away with this monolithic way of performing the computation. On CPU, all the threads are the same, and therefore, and they are independent, and therefore you tend to write monolithic, large, heavy threads when you are dealing with CPU parallelization. But on GPU, you would like to change that to fit the computation that happens in a hierarchical manner. Okay, so now what I would like you to do is to spend time in writing the code which uses one thread from each thread block as CR, as a representative, and it communicates with the other thread blocks, other representatives, to implement the global barrier. Right, so please try that. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Sir, we can simply add a sync threads, and we can say if ID equals to 0, equals to 0, we can just do an atomic increment, and that should be like check with the block size instead of the number of blocks instead of the threads.
Right. And there is something more that is required, something about ID.
Sir, if ID mod that block size is 0, or maybe something, then we can put increment the counter.
Yeah, that's correct. So we essentially need a representative from each thread block, which could be ID mod 1024, as Aditya and Rahul Venkat are mentioning. Alternatively, you can use thread ID x.x. Right? If thread ID x.x equals 0, then you can do atomic. So that seems good, what Venkat has mentioned. You have some statement. Then there is sync threads, which make sure that each thread is coordinated. All the blocks individually have synchronized. And then if thread ID x.x equals 0, then you do atomic increment. But that alone will not be sufficient. There is something more required. Will that be required? Yes, there is something more required, which is given in Rigved's code. If ID equals are present.
Sir, I forgot to include while I am doing that.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so for any barrier, right? There is there has to be a waiting loop, right? So we can use sync threads, but sync threads is internally going to have some sort of a loop. So what Venkat, if you look at Venkat's code, that waiting is missing. What can happen is that, assuming that there is statement 2 after this if statement, that statement 2 will start getting executed by some threads, right? Some thread block, right? So you need not the if condition. If condition is anyway required for the representative, but after atomically incrementing, you need to also wait, right? That waiting is going to be similar to what we saw in the code. As Rigved has pointed out, if ID equals are present. Yeah, sure, Venkat, no problem. If ID equals are present, then old equal to atomic increment, right? While old not equal to number of blocks. You wait there.
Sir, I meant it like this.
No. I think there is some problem. It's not the old value that you will see. See, the old value is not changing. Old value is a local variable. You'll have to look at the value of x. Maybe in this case star x, but see, old value is the value that is returned by atomic increment, which you can store in a local variable. What are you incrementing? You are incrementing x. Right? So x is the one whose value you will have to keep checking, and then x has to be, star x has to be volatile. Does that seem reasonable, Rigved?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Good. So I think it's very important that we try such codes out, because there are some small things which we miss out, but unless you try, you will not know your mistake. So yeah, this part seems to be fine. I'm just wondering whether you require the second sync threads. Any suggestions on whether this last sync threads in Rigved's code is required, or can we do away with it? It's not going to hurt as such, but I think that may not be required, because everybody will see the value at some point in time and then they will go ahead. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah. You are right. So so Rigved and Venkat are right that you require that sync threads, because that while loop is getting executed only by the representative, right? All the other non-representative threads are actually going to go outside this if block, which have to wait for the representative to join, and therefore we require the sync threads at the end of the if block also. That is correct. Krishna Vamsi, if while is out of scope, then we won't require.
Sir, as in while should be out of the if,
then you don't require. That is correct. Yeah, that is correct. So since we are doing this to improve performance, so what correctness wise, you are right, Krishna Vamsi, that if while loop is outside, which means that all the threads within the block are checking the value of old, then you don't require that sync threads. But if not, since we are doing it for improving performance, we would like that threads are just waiting rather than doing some load. That load is not going to hurt as far as performance is concerned, but it's going to unnecessarily create additional traffic with memory. So we would like to possibly let the representative only do that. And so this part seems to be good. Any other concerns here? Anybody sees any issues with this code?
So while inside the if is 5, while inside the if block is 5, will all the check, or only that representative?
Yeah. So okay. So let's talk. So what Krishna Vamsi's question is that if you have warp threads, does it cause any problem because of this? So since only one thread of the warp, some warps will not be part of this, but let's say the first warp, one thread is going to be part of this while loop and it is going to execute it continuously. The other warp threads for which the if condition is false, those are going to come outside. Those are going to wait outside the if block, which means that they are not going to execute any instruction, because that sync threads needs to be executed by all the warp threads, not only the block threads, but all the warp threads also. So they are not going to execute sync threads. The other warps are going to wait. They are going to execute sync threads. So let me put it this way. Let's say there are 10 warps, right? Let's say 0 to 9 are the warp IDs. Warp number 0 is going to, we'll discuss about warp number 0 later. Warp number 1 to 9 are going to start executing sync threads, and they are going to wait. In warp number 0, there are thread number 0 and then 1 to 31. 1 to 31 are going to have this condition false, ID equals representative, and therefore they are going to not execute sync threads, but they are going to wait for thread 0, which is the representative, to complete its execution of the if block, and then they both will join. They both meaning thread 0, the representative, and 1 to 31 threads of the same warp 0. So they are not going to start execution of sync threads. They are just going to wait, right? So assume that after that brace and before sync threads, there is some line. So they are going to just wait there for joining with thread 0. Thread 0 is going to execute this while old not equal to 1 repeatedly, while the other threads are masked, right? And it is going to go ahead until this not old, but maybe X or star X becomes same as B. At that time, thread 0 is going to finish execution of the while loop. It is going to come out of the while. It is going to come out of the if block, and then it will join the other threads, which means that those are going to get unmasked. And then all the 32 threads of the warp are going to participate with sync threads, which is going to be aligned with the other 1 to 9 warps, and then they all will go ahead for the next instruction after sync thread. Right? Any other concerns here? Okay, so let's look at this code. So let me actually finish this part. So sync thread should be there within each block. Representative from each block then synchronizes using atomics. Yeah, so that is what I wanted. Let's look at that code. So the main remains the same as it was before. The counter remains the same. The initialization also remains the same. Let's look at what K2 is doing. So we have again ID, then printf before. Then there is sync threads, which is what. So there is one sync threads here, and then another sync threads here, the way Rigved had mentioned. And then if there is a representative, right, which is this line, then I am going to atomically increment the counter. And while the counter is not equal to number of block threads, I'm just going to wait. Right? So that is what essentially is our code. And because of this while counter, we require counter to be volatile. So after that, there is sync threads, which is going to join with the other block threads. And then this is the printf after that. So the code looks exactly what, almost exactly as Rigved had mentioned and Venkat had mentioned. Any other, any issues with this code? All right. So let me try running it just to make sure that things are same. You can assume those to be same. So yeah, all of this, yeah. So before is before and after is after. Okay. So let's, this code also will work, and there are other ways which Rahul had suggested can be implemented. For example, this, if you have to have this particular global barrier repeatedly, let's say there is a while loop within which you have S1, then global barrier, then S2, and this while loop needs to be executed by different threads. There are ways in which this can be done. For example, if that happens, you would like to have this K2 counter set to 0, right? After every, let's say, iteration of global barrier, right? So one of the ways is that after the global barrier, one of the threads sets K2 counter equal to 0, right? But to make sure that that K2 counter equal to 0 is the value that reaches other threads, you need to have global barrier itself, right? So you will have K2 counter equal to 0 and then global barrier, and that doesn't make sense because you are actually implementing global barrier. So one of the ways in which that can be done is by making use of this peculiarity of atomic increment, using which it wraps around after this value is reached, right? So we can set this value to griddim.x rather than griddim.x plus 1, which is going to make sure that as soon as it reaches, will it be griddim dot? Will it be griddim.x or griddim.x minus 1? Yeah, sorry about these phone calls, but okay. So so atomic increment, if it is greater than equal to this value, this second value, then it becomes 0. Okay. So then I think it will have to be griddim.x. Yeah. So griddim.x is the is what I think. It is greater than equal to n, then it is set to, yeah, that means it will reach there. Yeah, we don't want it to reach griddim.x, so it should reach griddim.x minus 1, and then after that it should reach 0, right? So that is what is our expectation. It should revolve around these n values, and therefore this should be griddim.x minus 1, which is going to make sure that it reaches that value, and then it is going to wrap around. But because of that, this condition is never going to be true, right? Because it is never going to reach that griddim.x. So what we will have to do is to so how will we solve this problem? Any suggestions?
Is not equal to 0.
Yeah, so correct. So after griddim.x minus 1, it is going to reach 0, and therefore we will have to keep checking that it reaches 0 or not, and therefore we will say it is not equal to 0. Until then, wait. And more importantly, no thread is going to see the value 0 when it increments it. So the first thread, which is going to do atomic increment, it is going to see the value of K2 counter as 1. Right? And all other threads are going to see only the positive values. The last thread, which is going to increment, is going to see the value 0, because it would increment it from griddim.x minus 1 to 0 as a wraparound. But that is okay, because it is the last thread which is reaching the barrier, and therefore it will just come out of this loop, and then the other thread will also come out of that loop. So that's not really causing an issue, right? So that is another way. Yet another way which Rahul has suggested is that you could as well just do it this as a very large value, let's say int max, and you check for whether K2 counter mod griddim.x if that value is 0, right? So then you don't have to worry about this wraparound, etc. So these are different ways in which it can be implemented. There could be others. For example, some people, what they do is they initialize the counter to griddim.x. Right? That is the number of threads, the number of thread blocks. And then you go on decrementing the value until it reaches 0. That is also another way in which it can be done. Right? Again, you might have to take care of the wraparound. Yeah, so as Venkat has said, griddim.x minus 1, Jiva has said K2 counter not equal to 0. Correct. Any other concerns, questions here? All righty. So we'll move ahead to our slides. Okay. Okay, so now that we have understood a little bit of global barriers, which is an application of hierarchical computation, one of the other important aspects that come under synchronization is that we can use it for concurrent data structures. This topic is not usually taught in GPU programming. The reason being that GPUs are well suited for array-like structures, and concurrent data structures like linked lists, etc. It becomes a little bit of hassle. It's not nicely parallel. It has sequential bottleneck for traversal, etc. Nevertheless, I do cover this topic because I find it very interesting, and I hope students will also find it interesting. And you should, and some of our concepts of synchronization become clearer when we try to implement it in this manner. Right? So the first concurrent data structure is definitely arrays, and it's a very nice data structure for us because it's all completely parallel. So we can use atomics for updation of certain value if it is getting accessed by multiple threads, but more often than not, you can use independent memory locations by different threads to update. But if there is a common memory location, you can use atomics or even prefix sum for coarse insertion. What is meant by coarse insertion? That means that many threads are involved in insertion. So if you want to insert something into the work list, that's what our example was. Work list was implemented as an array, and we used prefix sum to decide at what location they should be inserting, and then they went ahead and inserted it without using atom. Right? Alternatively, we could use atomics also, right? So that was another way in which that can be done. So that was about arrays. Let's talk about singly linked list. Right? Let's see if there are things that become challenging when we are talking about even singly linked list. Right? So there are two important operations. One is insertion, there is deletion when it comes to synchronization requirement. There is also search, but we'll probably not worry about it right now. It's going to make life enough complicated with insertion itself. And many times in parallel processing, deletion, which in the sequential setting we just remove that node and point the previous node to the next node, etc. All of this was easy in the sequential setting, but in the parallel setting, this becomes a little tricky. The reason being that the node that you are deleting, that might be getting searched by different thread, right? Or you might be accessing it by different thread. In such cases, the behavior of deletion is not well understood, in the sense that the semantics of the linked list need to specify what should happen in such cases. Typically, it so happens that if search and deletion are happening in parallel, that is, they can happen in parallel, the semantics of the data structure will say that you could return, the search could return either true or false. That is, the element is present or element is not present. It is up to the search. It can return anything, right? Which does make sense because it is totally dependent on the ordering of the search as well as the deletion. If you want to make sure that one of the things happen, then you have to separate these in time, which needs a barrier or some sort of synchronization, some sort of lock sometimes to separate the deletion and search. But more difficult problems occur when you support this removal of the node. Let's say I'm freeing that node, right? I'm using CUDA free. As soon as I do CUDA free and somebody else is searching, then it can cause memory related problems. And therefore, you require heavy synchronization. You need to lock the variable before you can delete it and so on. So this causes some bottleneck in the code. So some of the people, what they suggest is, anyway, if you are allowing parallel processing of search as well as deletion, and it doesn't matter in which order these happen, the search could return true or false for that particular node. If there is no deletion happening, then you have to return true if that node is present. So why don't you do something like that? You don't reclaim that memory. You don't free that memory at all. You just mark that node as deleted so that the memory issues do not occur. Right? Because as soon as those memory issues occur, you have to get into heavy synchronization. Right? So you don't get into the actual removal of the node. Right? You just mark it as deleted. Right? So that is what many parallel implementations of deletion will do. And then at some point in time, when you are low in memory or you don't have too many operations happening, you try to garbage collect this particular freed memory. Right? So, or you reuse that memory. Let's say I have deleted something in an array or a linked list. You mark it as deleted. Next time you insert it at the deleted node. That is also another way. Insertion does not pose too much of a trouble as far as memory is concerned, because you are adding a new node, which is not known to the search anyway. Unless you have created other problems, which we'll come to when we are dealing with insertion. Right? So any questions so far on this introduction? Okay, so let me go ahead with this. So let's say that there is a linked list, right? And it has GPPU as the nodes. Are there students who are not aware of singly linked lists? Anyone? Okay. So let's say that I have this, and then I want to insert another G into this such that it becomes GPGPU. Right? I would like you, so this is happening in parallel. What does that mean? That things are things are happening across different threads, and different threads are probably inserting and operating on different nodes at the same time. Right? So to convert from GPPU to GPGPU, let's see if we require, we have enough gadgets to implement this. So the first thing is that I want to declare the structure. So the type definition is going to look like this. There is struct node. I have some character item, and then there is a pointer which is pointing to the next node. Right? The sequential way of inserting is going to look like very simple, that G's next pointer, which is currently null, that is going to point to P. And then this P, which is I'm calling as P1 just to distinguish P1 and P2. Maybe I should have written G2 here. Then that is going to change its next pointer to point to G. Right? So these are the two operations that I need to do in the sequential insert. My question is, how do you implement insertion? Because there are multiple insertions that are possible within the linked list at the same time. And the exact order of insertions is also not expected. I mean, in the sense that although we will say that G should be inserted between the two P's, that doesn't mean that you will always get GPGPU, because there might be another X which might be also getting inserted between the two P's. And then it is not clear if you are going to get GPGXPU or GPXGPU. So that is something which is typically undefined. Or the semantics say that you can have any of these two insertions. Right? So that is what it is. So therefore, what one can do is that without loss of generality, because it doesn't matter in which order these different elements are getting inserted, you could even think of inserting all the elements at one place, let's say at the head node. That is also okay. So we'll assume that, for example, there is a head node which is pointing to this particular node. Right? So with this background, can you try writing the code corresponding to inserting this G2 at the head node? Right? So it's not getting added between GPGPU, but just think that you are inserting it at the head node. So please try that and let me know if there are any issues. Any suggestions, any issues that you are facing, any confusions?
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah, Shira, go ahead.
Sir, so when like you said the position of inserting will be from the head, right? Like towards the head, right? So many people will be trying to insert at the head, right?
Yes.
So like there should be some synchronization issue then, right?
Yes, that is correct. So think about it this way, that let's say only element U is present in the linked list currently. That is probably easier. And then head is pointing there. Now there are 4 threads which are pointing to this G, this P1, this G2, and P2, and they all are trying to insert their node. So I mean, creation of their node can happen independently. That is not an issue. Now they want to update head to their own pointer, but that alone is insufficient, because the what can happen is that let's say that you update. So individually, each thread tries to update that it has this node, let's say G1, and it says G1 dot next, or G1 whatever arrow next is pointing to head. Right? So whatever head is pointing to, which is this U, that it starts pointing to, and let's say that that happens for all the threads in parallel. So now all of them are pointing to U, and then all the threads, they try to update head to their own node, which is like G1, P1, G2, P2, and then one of them is going to succeed at the end, and therefore head node is going to start pointing to one of them, which means that we will get either the linked list will contain either G1U or P1U or G2U or P2U, right? Which means that we have lost 3 updates from the other threads, which means that we have to synchronize a little bit. If it so happens that it all happens sequentially, that G1 comes first and therefore after that P1 comes, so then the linked list that we will get will be P1 G1U, right? So that is good, and then G2 comes, and then P2 comes, then we'll have P2 G2 P1 G1U, right? So then all the elements are there in the linked list in some order, but that is a good thing, in the sense that it's the best thing that can happen, but the best thing may not always happen. So we have to be careful about updating the link of a particular node to where head is pointing to, and then updating the head. So you have to think from that perspective and see what can be done. Any other suggestions? Any other issues? Shira, does that make sense?
Yes, sir. So anyway, in that case, the head pointer, when we try to update, right? Actually, that like there should be some lock kind of thing right there. Otherwise, see, only when that the thread which get access to that lock can update that head pointer. Otherwise, like this lost update issues will happen, right?
Yes. So why did you say lock and not atomic instruction?
Yeah, like I mean something which needs to be like a barrier, like what to say, it's like a critical section, like only one process is allowed to do that head update. That is what I meant. One thread should allow that, it should be allowed to do that thread head update, because so then it becomes sequential kind of access, right? Again,
yeah, that is okay. I mean, we can assume that this is part of a large processing, and therefore the sequential bottleneck is probably not causing any issue. We are focusing only on this insertion part, so it can become a little sequential. That is okay. Let's that is an issue which we'll worry about a little later. But the more important part that Shira has mentioned is that we need a lock rather than an atomic. We need some sort of a critical section, and the reason why that came up in her thinking is that there are 2 statements which are getting affected in this. One is updation of the next, and the second one is updation of the head. If you decouple these two, right, then you are not able to get the same let's say legitimate linked list. You will have this, as Shira mentioned, lost update problem. Although the first part, which is updation of the next pointer, is independent for each one, we might have to still push it in the critical section. This is a very important point, because atomic instruction is for one particular loadout store or one particular relative update, whereas you are updating two memory locations here. One is the next pointer, another is the head node. So here Rigved has mentioned some code. While atomic cache lock, so this is the lock implementation. While atomic cache lock -1 ID not equal to ID, you wait till you get your term. So this is like a lock implementation. And the last part of the atomic cache is essentially unlocking. And then once you have the lock, then you update anything, in the sense that there is a single lock which is available across the whole list, which means that it is available with the head. And therefore, then you can have any number of operations in between, right? Can you do better is the question, right? So this kind of lock that Rigved has mentioned is called as coarse-grained lock, which means that even if I have updates happening arbitrarily in the linked list, I can possibly do multiple updates. But because of I have a single lock for the whole linked list, and I'm adding everything at the head, therefore that head becomes a sequential bottleneck. So this will study a little more in the next class, which is going to be tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Any questions? Any suggestions?
Sir, regarding assignment 4, I have a question, sir.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sir, so this time main.cu will not be provided. We have to write it from scratch.
Correct. That's correct. This was done deliberately to make sure that you write complete program this time.
Okay, sir, fine.
Yeah, but if there are any confusions, just a minute, Ashit. If there is any confusion in understanding the assignment, or that it has to be, whether it has to be implemented in a particular manner or not, that we can check with the TAs. That I think the TAs will be able to help you, or I'll be able to post something. Yeah, Shed, go ahead.
Sir, so in assignment 3, there is one step which involves some kind of a sorting. And in that, do we have to like necessarily do it on the GPU, or can we do it on CPU? Because like there is vast performance difference in the like non-intuitive sense, right? Because it's performing very badly on GPU, and in CPU it's quite straightforward.
Yeah,
or shall we use some library like Thrust or something to sort it on GPU?
Yeah, you can use existing library calls. That is not an issue for sorting. I think this we had possibly discussed in one of the classes. Yes, you are allowed to use sort function from library calls. That is okay. That's not an issue. Whether it should be done either on CPU, I mean, can it be done on CPU itself? I think I'll have to check with the TAs. If you could post it on Moodle, one of us will, I mean, it's just today, but yeah, one of the TAs can just clarify whether it can be done on CPU.
Sure.
Any other concerns?
Sir, I think I read on NVIDIA forum that when Thrust is used with a low number of elements, sorting is beneficial on CPU, but when we have high number of elements, then it's beneficial on GPU.
That is correct. That is correct. So the sorting that gets implemented onto with Thrust, it has multiple versions, but one of the most efficient one uses not quick sort, but something else. What could that be? Does anybody know? So, sorry, what?
Merge sort?
Yeah, that's a good guess, but yeah, it doesn't use merge sort, because that merging becomes a little bit of a problem. Okay, there are some suggestions. Sai Chaitanya says radix sort. Krishna Vamsi says odd even transposition. I'm not sure if it uses odd even transposition, but yeah, it does use radix sort. Actually, I don't know what is odd even transposition. Maybe I need to look up. I don't know if it is related to radix sort, but yes, it does use radix sort when the number of elements is very large, and therefore, so that turns out to be more efficient. But if you have very few elements, then that is going to cause some bottleneck. I mean, essentially performance degradation. In which case, actually sorting on the CPU is going to be better. But since your average is going to be decided primarily on the large test cases, I mean, that is going to be the dominating one. Therefore, we will have, I mean, it's probably better to, even if you do it using, let's say, thrust-based GPU, even for a smaller case, I think it will still work out. As long as we have some parallelism in kernel, sorting on CPU should be fine. Again, I would like this to be deferred to what TS suggests. I'm not sure if it can be done on the, if they will allow you to do it on CPU. If they say, go ahead, well and good. But yeah, they might have some expectation, which I'm not currently aware. It's best to check with them once. All right, so we'll